Coming up on Tower Talks, students share their thoughts on a sexual assault survey, and we talk with Cassandra Jaramillo on diversity at UT. All this and more coming up on Tower Talks. And today in studio, we're joined by Evan Reed with College Republicans and Joseph Trahan with University Democrats. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
So for tonight, in his first press conference since becoming Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan on Tuesday reiterated his stance towards the White House and towards President Obama. He said he will not be backing down on his stance on immigration reform and federal government spending. On Monday, President Obama signed a 2-year budget deal, but in order to prevent the government from shutting down on December 11th, the House and Senate must both approve the measure. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest has called Ryan's recent remarks on President Obama preposterous, while Speaker Ryan is standing by his guns and saying he's willing to go on the offense when it comes to immigration reform. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you first. He called the president untrustworthy after the series of executive orders last year on immigration, saying that he circumvented the legislative process. Is this a valid reason not to work with the president and the White House on this issue?
No, I don't believe so. I think that the point of being the Speaker of the House is to communicate directly with the president and his administration to try and come to some agreement when it comes to policy implementation. And so I just think this recent statement that Paul Ryan has made is just pandering to some more of the conservative people that are within the House.
Okay, and Evan, how would you respond to that?
I think that Paul Ryan's right. When you have the president say time and time again he's incapable of doing exactly what he did, and then he goes around and does it, it shows it's clearly hypocritical for him to say, I do not have the authority to stop all these deportations, and then he does exactly that.
And so you are saying you do think the president acted
He acted unconstitutionally without, for sure. The Constitution clearly gives Congress the right to limit immigration, and they have the authority over it, not the president.
All right.
And the due process clause, or faithful execution clause of the Constitution says the president must duly take care of the laws, and he's not doing that.
So in response to what you said, that he's pandering to the more extreme Republican. Ryan came out and said he is trying to represent the whole GOP here with this statement that he's coming out and saying. Do you think that this is supporting what the whole GOP wants and thinks?
Yes, I don't believe the GOP believes they can trust Obama. They don't believe it. When they see time and time again he breaks his word saying, I cannot do this, and then he does it. He's broken his word over and over again. They won't trust him. And a majority of the GOP populace might believe in immigration reform. They don't believe we can trust this current president to implement it.
And I will say that Pew Research came out and said that 7% of Americans, only 7, agree with Ryan's views on immigration. So do you have anything to add to that or how that adds up?
Representative Ryan is trying, or Speaker Ryan now, is trying to ensure that we have a proposal which ensures our national security first. That is what he's trying to do. Is we must do it piecemeal. We can't just jam through some giant omnibus immigration bill and try to solve it all at once. You must do it one at a time, like immigration reform, border security, and you must separate it.
And then do you have anything to respond
I just think it's important to point out that when it comes to national security, immigration is not a major issue. We're not seeing a number of law-abiding, for the most part, besides being citizen, immigrants who are coming to this country trying to make a better life for themselves and their families, like many of our ancestors did. They are trying to live up to the American dream. They're not trying to undermine U.S. security. And so I think to claim that it's in the best interest of American security to piecemeal immigration reform, I just think that's just another excuse for not trying to solve the issue of immigration.
It definitely is, though. When you have the cartels taking full advantage of our inability to enforce our border, they're profiteering so much off of this illegal trade across the border, that must be stopped. And it's not just the profiteering of it. They come out here and commit violent crimes. When you see things like case laws that they're trying to implement, the sanctuary city policies, these are in allowing people with violent criminal records to stay here. Is that not every illegal immigrant is coming here to receive a better life? A lot of them are. But we must understand that that's not the case for every single person.
And it's important to point out that one solution that Democrats do offer up is trying to decriminalize and legalize marijuana and tax it in order to increase funding within on the domestic issues. And
I don't
think that
necessarily
that
think that's
would
just a
prevent the
partisan issue. There are a
cartels'
lot of Republicans
monopoly.
who also support that.
I think we're going to have to call it for now on that and move on to our next issue, but thank you for your opinions on that. So following the third debate hosted by CNBC last week, some GOP contenders have demanded greater control over future Republican debates. Over the weekend, advisors from 11 of the campaigns met in Washington to talk about ways in which control can be gained in the debate process and the formatting can be redone. RNC officials who play a key role in the format and content of the debates were not present at these meetings, but they did come out and say they're willing to look into making changes, and they have already suspended their contract with NBC for the upcoming debate in February. Carson and Trump are said to have kickstarted this conversation. And so I will ask you guys, Carson spoke specifically about how the debate should highlight the differences in the candidates, seeing as there are so many running. Do you agree with that? And then how should it be formatted? Obviously, you watched the debate. What did you think about the CNBC debate?
I believe the moderators were atrocious. When you see the questions they ask are so pointedly negative towards the candidates, instead of saying, what would you do about this issue? Take, for instance, there is question about Dr. Carson's tax proposal. Like Ted Cruz said, can you do math? That's essentially what the question equated to. And being a neurosurgeon, he's more than capable of doing that. I did see a couple differences in the debate, mainly when it came to entitlement form between Mike Huckabee and Chris Christie. That is something which must be talked about. And on the Republican side, people aren't talking about the fact that Social Security Disability Trust Fund runs out of money next year. That needs to be addressed now. And what are these candidates going to do to try to address that?
And so I'll ask you, what did you think of the debate? Were the moderators asking unfair questions, or?
I think to an extent, some of the questioning, I mean, it really didn't seem appropriate in terms of trying to gauge the proficiency and ideas, like the validity of ideas when it comes to some of the presidential contenders. However, I do believe that there is far more negativity that exists within the Republican Party itself against each other. I mean, you don't see the type of slander and words that are being pushed out in the Democratic Party like you do with the Republicans.
Would you agree with
Well,
that?
when you
or
have two
disagree?
people that are essentially running, O'Malley doesn't have the polling numbers to be considerably an effective candidate. You could talk a whole lot more about the substantive issues without having to be able to differentiate yourself through other means.
The majority of
And
the
then-
people who are running for president, the Republicans, are polling in single digits, much like
That's
O'Malley.
true, and that's because there's 12 plus candidates running.
Who
Which,
just need
if
to
you
give
just
up.
look at the math, it has to be that way. You'd have to be less than 12% or 10% for each candidate for the math. I mean,
So should
it's the
anything
sheer number.
should anything be done, coming up towards the next debate to be able to differentiate with that many candidates up there talking and speaking? How should they get their ideas out, if that's what you're saying?
I believe that they should ask the substantive policy questions about what their proposals actually are. With regards to tax reform, a lot of them have proposed different things. You have the Trump and Bush proposals, which are rather similar. Then you have the Cruz and Ben Carson, which are a single flat tax. Those vary greatly between having one tax rate versus 3 different brackets. You need to differentiate those differences between the two.
And do you have anything that you
I
think
just
should
wanted
be
to add
reformatted?
that I do believe that if what he is saying is true, that the Republicans have a number of solutions and ideas, and that they would bring those up on the campaign trail. They would bring those up during the debates, not talking about Hillary's emails or Bernie Sanders being a socialist, which most of them have a very blatant misunderstanding of socialism, period. So those are the main 2 things they talk about, and I think if they have ideas, they should talk about them more than Hillary and Bernie.
Thank you. Now, on Tuesday, Texans went to the polls for the statewide election, with probably the biggest news coming out of Houston. HERO, otherwise known as Houston's Equal Rights Ordinance, was defeated by a large margin. The ordinance would have enacted several non-discrimination measures, and the defeat came after efforts were made by Houston's first openly gay mayor, Anise Parker. In addition, all 7 statewide propositions discussed on Tower Talks last week were easily passed and will be added to the Texas state constitution, including some adding more property tax exemptions, dealing with transportation and road referendums. But I think the most shocking thing here was the margin by which HERO failed in Houston, 62.5% versus 37.5%, especially considering Mayor Parker is the first openly gay mayor. So I'll go with you. Why do you think this failed so miserably?
I think it was a perpetuation of misinformation on the part of the GOP, specifically Greg Abbott and his administration. When the election was going on, Greg Abbott had tweeted to his followers, as well as a number of other members within his cabinet, sent messages out to their supporters basically saying that if you don't vote against Proposition 1, that men will be able to go into women's bathrooms. That's how they summed up a proposition that would protect 15 different classes of people, including preventing same-sex couples from being discriminated against from their tenants, from them being a tenant in someone's home or apartment building.
And do you think?
I think it failed for two particular reasons. One, when you look back at the mayor's subpoenas of pastors and their sermons content several months ago, that made a powerful enemy out of the Christian groups in Houston. And then two, coming forward with this, the inclusion of the protections for transgenders in using the restrooms of their choice, that in combination with already the angry pastors with her targeting them, led them to come together to try to take this down. If it didn't include those protections, because that's really what it was focused on, was the transgenders being able to use the restroom of their choice. If it wasn't for that, I'm pretty sure that would have passed in Houston.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Still to come, diversity at UT and a UT system sexual assault survey that was released to students today. Keep right here on Tower Talks. Last week at the Texan Talks Forum, President Finvest spoke about minority enrollment and was confronted by students. It caused a little bit of debate around the numbers being used for the number of enrollment of black students, 3.9% or 4.5%. Our Cassandra Jaramillo is live in the studio to talk about enrollment report and diversity on campus. So, Cassandra, I know there was this debate between the percentages and students. Where were these numbers coming from, and how were biracial students factored into these percentages?
Right, Avery. And so basically the whole debate that occurred was, Fenvis used the number 4.5 and a student challenged him saying, no, it's actually 3.9. Only 3.9 of black students at UT are here. And basically when I spoke to Fenvis, what he told me is that the university uses the number of the black student population and those who are multiracial but identify as black. And when you put those two numbers together, that's where Fenvis brought up the 4.5 number. And so taking a little deeper look into the enrollment report that just came out just last week, I spoke with some administrators and had a talk about how we can improve diversity on the 40 acres.
After UT student Jessica Bethea found herself on a university poster, she thought the university was portraying an unrealistic image of what diversity is like on campus.
I felt, kind of like a poster child.
According to recent enrollment numbers for fall 2015, the total black population at the university grew to 2,304 students, up 2.2% from last year.
UT, I feel like, although it has made strides, I think that it is trying to show the nation that it has made even more strides than it has when it really hasn't.
UT President Gregory Fenvis, who began his leadership in June, said the last 10 years show a growing black student population at UT, but he wants to enrich the learning environment with more diversity.
So this past fall it was 4.5%, and 10 years ago it had been 3.7%. So a positive change. I don't feel that it's enough. We need to continue to make progress. Always open to having dialogue so that we can discuss these issues. I believe I'm proactive in identifying how we can start to continue the progress that the university has made over many years and do it as best we can and as quickly as we can.
So although the UT black population increased this past year, administrators agreed that more needs to be done to focus on diversity on the 40 acres.
One of the dilemmas I think you will find in Texas is that there are a lot of talented black students in Texas. And until we are able to free up more merit-based financial aid, we will lose a lot of sharp black kids to Stanford, Michigan, Northwestern and places like that, and they can go to those places for free.
Associate Vice President of Division of Diversity and Community Engagement and Professor Dr. Leonard Moore said he was impressed by the increase of enrollment with first-time freshmen at UT, but it's time to look ahead at the future years to see how the university can improve its diversity.
I think there's progress. We can't go back and change what was or wasn't done in the past. I think we got a lot of momentum moving forward.
Cassandra Jaramillo, Tower Talks.
In the conversation about diversity is just going to continue. Just next month, the Supreme Court is going to hear the UT versus Fisher case for the second time, and that's scheduled for December 9th, 2015. Reporting live here in studio for Tower Talks, Cassandra Jaramillo.
Thanks, Cassandra. So concerning the Fisher case, how do you think that that's going to pan out?
I don't think it's going to work out in her favor. I mean, quite honestly, I think when you look at the evidence, I don't think that the University of Texas acted in a way that would somehow be discriminatory.
Do you have anything to add on the Fisher case, affirmative action?
Looking at Sandra Day O'Connor's opinion on affirmative action, it appears that they're going to strike it down, because she wrote that the intent of affirmative action was that someday it would be taken away when the field has been leveled, but I don't believe that time has come yet.
All right. Now, when we come back, we'll discuss a UT system climate survey on sexual assault that was released today. Stay tuned. Earlier today, a sexual assault survey was sent to 15% of the UT student system population as a part of a larger survey on campus climate throughout the UT population. We asked students around campus their thoughts.
I think it's way higher than it ever should be. I know that we're slightly below the national average, I think, but I think both are still, I think it's like 19% or something like that. It's an awful, like it's awfully high, and we definitely should be doing something about it.
I think education growing up would probably help a lot, and more so than like just say abstinence education.
Kind of hard to tell what's going on with the low amount of people that will kind of respond to the surveys. So it's hard to tell, but the numbers that do come back from the few people that do respond are kind of, concerning.
So this survey follows the AAU national survey that came out earlier this fall, and it's looking just at a broad look at the UT system. But the survey was only sent out to 15% of students randomly. So do you think that that's a comprehensive enough look at the UT population, or is it too small of a percentage to really get a handle on it?
I believe if we get all the responses back, that should be sufficient.
And do you think that all 15% of those students will respond?
No.
Yes, no? Okay, and what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that we should try and send out the survey to as many people as possible because, like the question you asked, will all 15% respond? Probably not, but if we had a larger sampling pool, then we could possibly have more information and get a more accurate viewpoint of what sexual assault is like on campus or around campus.
All right, well,
For students. Sorry.
we'll have more as soon as those results come in. And we're not just done yet. Keep it here for our social media sign out. With the controversy that Houston's Equal Rights Ordinance brought, among them was a brief Twitter battle between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Democratic presidential contender Hillary Clinton. On November 2nd, Abbott tweeted out to followers to vote Texas values, not Hillary Clinton values, with specific regards to HERO, which was Prop 1 in Houston. Clinton quickly tweeted back, saying to vote yes on Prop 1 and that Governor Abbott is right. Equality is one of Clinton's values. Abbott fired back, stating matter-of-factly that Americans can expect Clinton's Second Amendment values to change like they did on equality, citing a link to a 2004 video showing Clinton voiced support of marriage between a man and a woman. And Abbott has now recently responded, sending out a fundraising email featuring the Twitter battle. So what do you think about that? What's going on here?
I think it gave Abbott his 15 minutes of fame, but of course it dwindled because anytime you're compared to Hillary Clinton, I think it's difficult to kind of stand tall, but that's just my own personal bias. I believe that as opposed to her 2004 stance on same-sex marriage, I believe, like most Americans in her age group, they are evolving on the issue, as opposed to guns, where I think that there is a lot more involved, on a safety standpoint with her viewpoint on guns, as opposed to same-sex marriage or just two consenting individuals who want to spend the rest of their life together.
So do you think this is a matter of Texas values versus Hillary Clinton values?
I just think this was a partisanship escapade, which really wasn't necessary. I do agree that we probably shouldn't have passed it because of certain provisions within it with the transgenders being able to use restrooms. If I had a daughter going to high school, and I would probably not want to have a person with male genitalia being able to use that locker room with her. So.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this week. Thank you, Evan and Joseph, for joining us in the studio tonight, and thank you for tuning in for political updates throughout the week. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and email your comments and questions to towertalks@ut@gmail.com. I'm Avery Travis, your host, wishing you all a great rest of your evening.